and I got worried. I don't want to put my daughter at a dangerous environment. I want to keep her safe, and this information will let me decide what school is best for her. I could have stayed at my home campus, but I actually don't know if that vaccine rate is any better at my home campus than this magnet school program. And so this is very powerful information for parents, and my daughter's health matters to me. I do anything to keep her safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Representative Click.
Thank you for being here today and telling us about your daughter. I too have a daughter who is immunocompromised. She is an adult and has had a stem cell transplant. She's a mom with a little boy, and while she was undergoing her treatment, her oncologist recommended that she delay the immunizations for her son because of the possibility of it making her sick if he was shedding live virus. Does that concern you any, as far as your daughter going to school, that somebody may have been recently immunized with a live virus product?
It's funny, we actually brought this question to our veterinarian about our dog's vaccines too. I mean, this is a lot of information that we take in. She's at a point in her treatment where the exposure to the vaccine isn't as concerning. She definitely cannot get a live vaccine herself, but just the classroom exposures to a recently vaccinated child wouldn't cause her harm at this point in her treatment, but definitely there were other points that it would have.
So she's pretty far into her remission?
Yes. Yes.
Representative Zettler.
Let me ask you this, and by the way, thank you for being here. You know, we all understand a parent with a sick child. Let me tell you, when my children were sick, I was sick. So, when we see a lot of these outbreaks, very often they're not among children that are not vaccinated. They're children that are vaccinated, and they're children that are vaccinated they've had all the scheduled vaccinations, and yet when we've seen some of these outbreaks, overwhelmingly it's in a population that the children are fully vaccinated. So I think some people would be concerned that this gives a false impression to people. The other thing is that, like, if you look at the websites for a lot of these cancer hospitals, they never say don't bring a child here that's not vaccinated. They say don't bring a child here who's been recently vaccinated with a live vaccine. And so therein seems to be a contradiction that one, the ones that have been getting sick have been in populations that were largely vaccinated. The other is that when you talk about immune-suppressed patients, that what they say is in the facility, don't bring in someone with a live vaccine that have been recently vaccinated with a live vaccine because of this problem of sloughing. And what they don't say is don't bring children that are not vaccinated.
Okay, so there's 2 points, and I'll answer those just as a pediatrician, tying that I'm a mom, but what we tend to see in those outbreaks is a lack of herd immunity. So the actual vaccination rate in that small population drops to a critical level. Because vaccines actually are not perfect. There are children who do get fully vaccinated and maybe have some undiagnosed immunodeficiencies that don't allow their bodies to completely respond to those vaccines. And so even though they were completely vaccinated, their bodies are not able to completely fight off the vaccine or that actual virus. What we rely on in those children and immunocompromised children is herd immunity, and so that if there's enough people in their community that are vaccinated around them, they don't ever get exposed to the virus or the bacteria, but somebody brings that into the community. So if a traveler from, there's a measles outbreak in Europe right now. So if somebody visited Europe and brought that back home, they could carry it, but they would have to be exposed to someone whose body hasn't completely responded to the vaccines for that virus to then spread. Speaking to the other point about, it's interesting that we're talking about live viruses. My daughter was not allowed to go into public during the most critical points of her treatment. Those children will likely not be in the school setting. My daughter wasn't allowed out of the house. She was told, you can come to your doctor's appointment and you can go to the ER when we tell you to go to the ER. So she actually never saw anything but the four walls of our house and the four walls of the hospital. And so during those critical points when the live vaccines that she get exposed to would have actually caused her very severe illness, she wasn't even allowed out, and our dogs were not allowed to be vaccinated either.
Okay, thank you.
Members, any additional questions of Dr. Pomeroy? Thank you for sharing your testimony with us. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chair calls